Hello students, welcome to the video tutorial of Informatics Practices for class 11th. Today we'll be discussing the first part of our chapter, data handling. Okay, this is you can say a foundation or a backbone chapter for your Python of class 11th, because in this we'll be discussing about the various data types and the root causes for any programming. Okay, so whatever the programming which you are going to create in Python and for the chapters or in the next even in class 12th, whatever the topics will be there, that will be dependent upon this basic topic of data handling chapters. Okay, so without any delay, let's begin. First of all, have a look over the introduction part first. What is data handling? Data handling basically refers to the process of gathering, recording, and presenting information in a way that is helpful to others. Okay, so this data handling topic is not specifically designed for the computer science or for informatics practices courses. Data handling you must have studied in lower classes, also in mathematics and in various other subjects too. Why? Because data handling is not a limited term. It is a very descriptive term, because data handling basically requires the information of any kind of data. Okay, and if any kind of data is there, it is a possibility that the data is unorganized or not in a proper source format. Okay, so what you need to do, you have to refine that data. Okay, so for that you need to gather the data first, then record it at a particular place or in a particular, you can say, any variable. Okay, and then you have to present that information in such a way that it could be understood to the audience. Okay, and that type of data can be used as a handful data. Okay, or useful data. So that only we are saying here also that data handling basically refers to the process of gathering, recording, and presenting information in a way that is helpful to others. Okay, for instance, in graphs or chart, as you know that whenever any information is there which is in the form of visual elements, like in the form of graphs or the charts, it provides you a better understanding about that particular data. Okay, so this data handling is also sometimes known as the statistics. Okay, and this statistics term you must have studied in class means 7th 8th, also in mathematics and in science also you must have heard this term statistics. Why we are calling this statistics? Because we are dealing with the graphical information or the visual elements of the data. Okay, so if any data is there, a gross data is there, a grouped data is there, we used to create some mean, median, mode, and different types of things for presenting that information in the form of the histogram or bar graphs and all. Okay, so all that things are to be covered in this data handling. Okay, so now let's talk about the Python contrast. In Python, how we are going to use this data handling. Okay, so Python provides a predefined set of data types for handling the data it uses. Okay, so whatever the data you are going to use in Python programming, that has to be handled in a particular way, in a specific way. Okay, so for that you are having a built-in features with Python. That for that the data can be stored in any of these data types. So by default, Python is having some data types inbuilt. Okay, so this chapter is going to discuss various types of data that you can store in Python. Okay, means whatever the types of data are there, like if it is a string type or it is a character type, it's anything, any particular data which you are using for your programming purpose has to be discussed here, that how we are going to store that type of data. Okay, so that only it is saying that of course a programmer also needs a means to identify stored data, because if we are going to create any program, we have to classify that which type of data it is. Okay, because if one type of data is going to be used in a different format, it can produce a different result or may not produce any result. It may lead you to a particular confusion or a particular error message. Okay, so you need to be very distinguished about this, that what particular data is and which type of data it is and where it is stored. Okay, so now we are going to discuss those things. Okay, now let's discuss about the data types. What are data types and how they can be used? So you can say that first of all, the data can be of many types. That only I have discussed earlier also, that it can be character, it can be integers, real, string, etc. Okay, don't worry if you are not aware of these terms earlier, you will get used to it by and by. Okay, so it can be character. Character means a single alphabet. Okay, if you are writing a b c d, these type of things are under characters. Okay, integers means, you already know that what are integers in maths, you must have studied that any particular entry which is in the form of the number with a particular symbol, that is -1, -2, +1, +2, +3, anything. Okay, that all are the integers, and the real values are also there. String means set of characters, that if single character is there, that is under the character data type, and if multiple characters are being used together, then it will combine and form a string. Okay, for example, abc is a string, but individual entries of abc, that is a, b and c, are the characters in themselves. Okay, so how we can distinguish that what is a string and what is not? So anything which is enclosed in quotes, okay, this apostrophe you can say in quotes, represents string data in Python. Okay, so if you are writing anything in a programming language, in Python programming language, then wherever you find this mark here, this one, this is going to represent the string data in Python. Okay, now, a number without fractions represent integer data if in that particular data there is no fractional part. Okay, means if there is a fractional part, it will be considered as a, means a particular real data. Okay, and if it is having some fractions involved in that, then it may be considered under this, means you can say floating number. Okay, we'll be discussing about these things, that what is floating numbers and all. So numbers with fractions represent real data, and true and false represents boolean data. Okay, whenever you are going to find numbers with the help, with the fractions involved in it, it will be called the real data, and if the fractions are not there, and you are going to obviously call it an integer data. Okay, and if the data is in the form of true or false entry, okay, then that will be considered as boolean data. Boolean data you must have seen. If you are talking about anything which is having it or not having it, only two conditions there are there. Suppose if you say that if you are writing apple, in that apple set of characters, d is there or not. Okay, so there are only two possibilities, either it is present or it is not present. Okay, so such type of data are called the boolean data, which is having only two type of responses, either it is true or either it is a false. Okay, so that type of data are represented as the boolean data. And since the data to be dealt with are of many types, a programming language must provide ways and facilities to handle all type of data. Okay, now as we are saying that these type of data, as you have seen, like integer, string, characters, all these are several types of data. Okay, so these data have to be dealt in a different way. Okay, and a programming language must provide ways and facilities to handle all such type of data. Okay, now let's see what are the different types of data types present in our Python programming language. So that is shown to you in the form of this numbers. Okay, first one is a number, second is the strings, third is the list, next is the tuple, next is the dictionary. Okay, now first let's discuss about the numbers, what is there in this numbers. Okay, so as it is clear by the name that the number data type are used to store numeric values in Python. So whenever you are going to talk about the numbers are going to deal only with the numeric data types. Okay, that is all the things will be relevant to the numbers, no alphabet, no characters. Okay, so it is going to talk about only the numbers. And the numbers in Python have following core data. First is the integers, which you have talked already, and this integer should be signed or unsigned, anything is considered under this integers only. Okay, that is plus sign is there, negative sign is there. Okay, so all those things are covered under this integers. Okay, second is the booleans. Boolean, you know that I have told that true or false, true or false, or you can say 0 or 1. Okay, true or false can be also regarded as 0 or 1. 0 means false, 1 means true. Okay, second are the floating point numbers. Floating point numbers that I have told earlier that we are going to discuss. So floating point numbers are basically the decimal numbers. Okay, or the numbers which are having the fractional part included in them, like 78.9, 3.56, all such type of data will be considered under this floating point numbers, okay, the decimal numbers in simple way. And complex numbers are also there. If you have not studied complex numbers till now, you have to understand this, that certain set of data are there which we have to consider imaginary, okay. So it may be a condition when we have to represent a combined or structure of the data in which there is also a real part and there is also an imaginary part. So this j in the data represents the imaginary part, and whatever the data is before this plus symbol is the real part, okay. So for this example, 0 plus 4.5j, 0 is the real part and 4.5j is the imaginary part, okay. So these type of data will be considered under the complex numbers, okay. Next are the strings. So the first classification for the data types were numbers, and now the second one is the strings. As I have already discussed, whatever you are writing in codes, that are considered as the strings. So a Python string is a sequence of characters, and each character can be individually accessed using its index. Now I've already discussed that whenever you are having a single character, that is a character data type, and when multiple characters are used at once, then that will combine and create a string, okay. Now if you are going to combine these multiple characters, every individual character is having a place inside this string, and that is its index number, okay. Now for example, if you are saying that hello, so this hello is in the quotes, and so if quotes is there, it is obviously going to be a string data type. So hello will be considered a string in Python as it is enclosed in quotes. Actually it is stored in this fashion. Now let's see what is the fashion there. See, if you are going to write hello, hello is basically a string, but it is having multiple characters inside this. That is the H, E, double L, and O. Okay. So if you are going to index them, okay, you are not going to actually index them. It is already indexed in the Python. Okay. So the H is having the 0 index, E is having 1, L is having the index number 2, then another L is having the index number 3, and then O is having the index number 4. Okay. Also, you can say it is having a negative indexing also. The negative indexing will start from -1. So, from the backward, if you are going to say, then you will say O will have the -1 index, L will have the -2 index, then again L will have the -3 index, E will have the -4 index, and H will have the -5 index. So this is your forward indexing, okay, which is starting from 0, and this one is your backward indexing, which is starting from the negative number, that is -1, -2, -3, -4, and -5. Okay, depending upon the length of the string, that how much long the string is. Okay, so this indexer number will be given accordingly. I think it's clear now. Let's move forward. Let's discuss about lists now. Now these things, that list, tuples, and dictionary, are basically different chapters in your IP syllabus. So you can understand that these topics are not such topics which can be covered in 2 or 3 lines, okay. But here, for giving a brief introduction for these topics, we have written some particular instances and we'll be discussing about that. First, the list. So a list in Python represents a list of comma separated values of any data type between square brackets. Okay, so if any data is there which has been written in a square bracket, like first one you can see, for example 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4 comma 5. So you can see here it is enclosed in this square brace, okay. So this is the list, okay. So whenever you are going to see this square bracket and certain set of data are inserted inside it, then the whole data combined will be known as the list, okay. Now in this list you can use the numbers, you can use alphabets, you can use different characters, and even a mixed form also you can use, in which the numbers are also there and the characters are also there, okay. So lists are going to allow you all such implementations, okay. Next is the tuples, and the tuples are represented as a list of comma separated values of any data type within parentheses. Okay, list was represented using the square brackets, and this tuples are going to be represented with parentheses. Okay, this whatever the bracket you say, this is considered as a parenthesis in programming language, and you can see the example. For example, here we are having 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and these datas 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are enclosed in this parenthesis. So whenever the whole data are considered as in parenthesis, then you are going to consider it as a tuple in Python. Again, it can have numbers and it can have strings or the characters, and also it can have a mixed form also where the alphabets or the characters are also there and the numbers are also there. Okay, now there is a difference between list and tuple, that list and tuples, one of them is a mutable and one is the immutable. So we are going to discuss that also later on, but try to understand this slowly and grab the topics accordingly. Okay, you don't have to worry about the syllabus right now. Okay, we will be going slowly with these things so that the things get clear to you. Okay, next thing is the dictionaries. A dictionary is an unordered set of comma separated key value pairs. Okay, so whenever you are going to create a dictionary in Python, it is going to have an unordered set. Okay, and unordered set will be in the form of key value pairs. That means whenever you are going to use any data inside this dictionary, it should have a certain format. Okay, there should be a key there and the particular value associated with those keys. Okay, and again for symbolizing these dictionaries we are having this curly braces. Okay, so whenever you are going to have a curly braces and the data enclosed inside it, that will be considered a dictionary as a Python. Okay, so with the condition that all the keys of the dictionary must be unique. This is an important condition, that whatever the data you are going to feed inside this dictionary, each data should have a unique key. Okay, the values can be unique, may not be unique, that is not a problem, but the keys should be unique. Okay, for example, here you can see a colon 1, e colon 2, I colon 3. So here a, e and I are the keys, and the 1, 2 and 3 are the values associated to different keys. So the one value is associated with the key a, 2 is associated with the key E, and 3 is associated with the key I. So this A, E and I have to be unique, that cannot be repeated, but these values can be repeated, that is not a problem. 1, 2, 3 can occur many times, but this A, E and I should be occurring just once. Okay, so that should be unique, that only we have sent. Okay, and this is the parenthesis, sorry, the curly braces, and this curly braces is the symbol of dictionary. And similarly here also you are having key value pair. Okay, so whenever the data is in this key value form and also given in this curly braces, then you are going to consider it as a dictionary in Python. Okay, now this is a basic summary which are involved in this data types. So you can say that core data types are basically having numbers, none, sequences and mappings, and inside the numbers you are having integer, floating point and complex numbers, and inside the integer you are having the boolean data types. Okay, similarly for the sequences you are having string, tuple and list. Okay, sequences means whenever you are going to talk about different sets of numbers at a single place. Okay, that are considered under this sequences. And next is the mappings, and in mappings you are having dictionary. Okay, so all the data types we have already discussed. So these are going to create a whole summary of data types inside this Python programming language. Okay, now let's see what are the different uses of them. Now we are going to discuss the topic mutable and immutable types. Now student, this is a very important topic for your class 11 syllabus. Why? Because whatever the data types are there in this Python programming language have been classified under these mutable and immutable types only. So either the data type is going to be a mutable type or it is going to be a immutable types. Okay, so let's see what is there in this. The Python data objects can be broadly categorized into two types, mutable and immutable types, that we have already told that whatever the data types are there, either it is going to fall in the category of mutable types or it is going to fall in under the category of immutable types. Okay, you can say in simple words that the modifiable or the changeable entries are known as the mutable types, and the entries which cannot be modified or changed, that are the non-modifiable types, and that are known as the immutable types. Okay, so immutable types are those that can never change their values in place. Whatever the value are there, it is going to be fixed with them. Okay, so that type of data types will be considered under immutable types. In Python, the following types are immutable: integers, floating point numbers, booleans, strings, and tuples. So whatever the data types are there, and among these data types, these particular data types, that is the integers, floating point numbers, booleans, strings, and tuples, are considered among the immutable types. Okay, and mutable types are those whose values can be changed in place, and only three types of data types are there in this mutable types. These are the lists, dictionaries, and the sets. Okay, so already I've told you that there are only two classification for the data types. So most of the data types are already falling in this immutable types, and only three data types are there, that is the list, dictionary, and set, which is falling under the category of mutable types. Okay, now let's try to analyze at how this mutable and immutable types are going to work. So before that, we need to understand what is the working of storage containers in Python. Okay, actually there is no storage container in a Python. All the values are linked to a proper memory address. Okay, so first of all, let's try to understand that how variables work in Python. Okay, so Python variables in memory. Suppose if we write the following set of commands, p is equals to 7, q equal to p, and r equal to 7. Suppose these three lines we have written of the code. Now what it is going to do, this Python interpreter, whenever we are going to run that code, different set of numbers are already there in the memory. Okay, in Python every number and every alphabet is already having a particular memory address inside this Python. Okay, so 7, 8, 9, and 10, all these numbers and many more numbers are there. For instance, we have taken these four numbers. So 7, 8, 9, 10 are already having their memory address in this Python storage. Okay, what will happen if we have written this p equal to 7, then p, q, and r, because since we have written p equal to 7, q equal to p, so q is also pointing where p is pointing, and r is pointing to 7. So you can say that all these three entries, p, q, and r, are just pointing to this 7. Okay, so the memory address of 7, which is there in Python, which is already stored, these p, q, and r are also going to point to that particular memory address only. Okay, but if we are going to have some certain modifications, and after that we are going to write p equal to 10, r equal to 7, q equal to r. Now what will happen actually, this 7, 8, 9, 10 are still fixed at their memory places. Okay, now if we are going to see, according to the following set of commands, p equal to 10, p will point to 10 here. Okay, now earlier p was pointing here to 7, now p is pointing to 10. Okay, so what happened here actually, that 7 has not changed its memory address, 7 is still at its own memory address. What happened here, p equal to 10, p has changed its pointing value to 10, and now p is pointing to the memory address of 10. Okay, and q and r are still pointing to 7 according to this code, r equal to 7, q equal to r. So if you are going to see for that, q and r are still pointing to 7. Okay, so what here actually is happening, that p is pointing to several numbers in these two set of codes. Okay, so p is going to change its pointing value from one number to the second number. Okay, but the numbers are already stored in this Python memory set and having their own individual memory addresses. So you can see here the 7, 8, 9, and 10, and this, even if a, b, c, d are there, all those things are already inside the memory address of Python. And since they are not changing their places or the memory places, so they are considered as the immutable types. Because even if the characters p equal to 7 and p equal to 10 we are going to change it, 7 is not going to change its memory address, it is going to remain at its own memory address. But if we are going to write p equal to 10, 10 is now being pointed with the help of p, and 10 was already stored in a particular memory set of Python. Okay, if you, it is a bit confusing now, let's try to understand it from a different perspective. Okay, now let's quit this and move to our Python. Okay, let's move to our Python code. Let's try to analyze it from there. Okay, now suppose if we have written this and we are trying to check out whether this mutable and immutable types are practically working or not, let's try to understand it. Okay, now suppose we have written this code earlier. Let's try to find out what is happening. We have written p equal to 5. Okay, p equal to 7 or p equal to 5, anything can be there. Okay, p equal to 5, then q is equals to p, and then we have written r equal to 5. R equal to 5. Okay, now if we are going to ask the id is going to return the memory address. Okay, so let's see the memory address of 5, where 5 is stored inside this python. Okay, so it is showing you some value. Okay, this is the memory address at which the 5 is stored inside this python data set. Okay, now if you check for the ids of p and q and r, suppose if you are writing p id of p, then we are pressing enter, you can see these values are same. Okay, first one and the second one, both these values are the same. Why? Because 5 is having its own memory address and p is pointing to this memory address only, so p is also having this id. Okay, and if you are going to write id of q, again if you are going to press enter, and you are going to see this id only. Similarly, if you write id of r, again you will see this id only. Why it is happening? Because I've already told that when you are going to write such statements, such commands, you are already symbolizing that p is pointing to 5 and 5 is having its own memory address, that is this one. Now q is equals to p, that is q is pointing to p and p is already pointing to 5, so q is also pointing to this memory address only. Okay, and r is equal to 5, so r is again directly pointing to this 5 memory address only. Okay, so that you have to understand that these things are going to vary according to the data types stored. Okay, or the variable which it is pointing. Okay, now suppose if we write here p equal to 10. Okay, and then press enter, and now see, if we are going to search for id of p, pressing enter, now see, earlier when we wrote id of p, this was the memory address returned. Okay, and now if we are going to write id of p, this is the memory address which is being returned. That means the id of p has changed, that is the memory address of p has changed. Okay, why? Because p was pointing to different numbers. But if still, if you are going to search for the id of 5 and pressing enter, you can still see that id of 5 has not changed, it has remained at the same place. Why? Because 5 is an integer and 5 is being pointed out in similar memory address. Okay, so it is not changing its memory address. So that only we have discussed in immutable types. Then immutable data types are those data types which are not going to change their value in place. Okay, and these numbers are not changing their values in place. That's why you can say that these type of data types are considered as the immutable data types. Okay, and if you go to the mutable data types, mutable data types means which has going to change their values. Okay, so if you write something like this, suppose we are writing chk is equals to, we are creating a list here, 2 4 6, as we have discussed that lists are considered under the mutable types. Okay, now let's see whether it is mutable or not. So we have written chk is equals to 2 4 6, and then if we are going to check for the id of chk, and we are going to press enter, see a memory address is being returned. Okay, now if we want to do certain modification in this chk, and we want to change this 4 to 40, suppose. Okay, so how we can do it? As we have already told that each values are stored under a particular index. So this is 0 index, this is 1 index, and this is on the second index, that is 2 index. So let's write the index number chk 1, because 1 will point for 4, 0 will point for 2, 1 will point for 4, and 2 will point for 6. Okay, so chk1 is equals to 40. Okay, and now if we are going to write chk, now you can see this list has changed. Earlier it was 246, now it has become 240 and 6. Okay, now if you are going to search for the id of chk, press enter, see the chk id is still the same, 61293312, 61293312, but still there has been a change. Okay, earlier when we are changing this p from one address to other address, the P was going to change its memory address, but now the memory address is not being changed, and still the change has taken place inside this list only. So when we change the number from 5 to 10, the memory address changed earlier, but now when we have changed this 4 to 40, there has been a change inside this list, but still the memory address is at its place. Okay, so you can say that if a change is being allowed here, okay, so that type of things will be considered under the mutable types. Okay, why? Because it has allowed a change inside this list, and still the memory of chk is the same. Okay, so you have not, it is showing you that the whole this chk is not changed, but inside this chk a single change has been occurred. So you can say these type of data types are going to allow you certain modifications, and it will be still stored at the particular memory address only. Okay, so that's why we are saying that the list or the string are going to be considered as the particular mutable types. Okay, so that is the end of the discussion for today. We'll be discussing in further details of this chapters from the next video tutorial. So till then, take care students. Thank you.